Hello, BookTube. Well, as you can see, I have a guest. This is my friend Sam, visiting from New York. We're going to have a fun evening of wine and calzones and endless book talk. And maybe, you'll probably twist my arm for some High School Musical clips. That'll probably happen.
Clips?
You probably want to watch the whole thing.
Whole trilogy.
But before we get down to the festivities, I want to do a tag. I meant to do this tag on BookTube. We do tags on Tuesday. Tag Tuesday. And I meant to film this on Tag Tuesday because I was actually tagged. I'm never tagged by anybody because I'm a hated outcast on BookTube. I mean, the understanding nod happened a little fast there. But in this case, I was tagged. But right when I was going to do it, the groundskeeper showed up and stood outside blowing gas-powered leaf blowers at solid concrete for 4 hours. So there was no way that I could film it, so I didn't do it. And then I thought, do it again when you get a chance, but it's better to do it with somebody. This was done by Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads, and he tagged me, and it is his Bookish A to Z Hot or Not tag. where you are not meant to dilate. You are meant to simply go through a list of yes or no, hot or not.
Sounds very Mark Zuckerbergian. All right, let's do it.
And it's all the letters of the alphabet. So A is audiobooks. Hot or not?
To me, not. I don't have a car, so I don't drive, so I don't listen to them. That would be a place where it would make sense to listen. Although even when I had a car, I couldn't do it because it would make me fall asleep. And I don't run, I don't jog, and I don't go to the gym and go on a machine where you would listen to audiobooks. I go for walks, but I don't want to listen to an audiobook while I'm doing that. Mm. So no, there is no time when I would want to do it. And I don't know how to, so I've never learned how to properly read while listening as an audiobook.
Yeah, I'm a not as well. Not for the same reasons, because I have plenty of opportunity. It sounds like you're talking about windows of opportunity to use these things. I have plenty of opportunity, but it just doesn't appeal to me. If it's a new release, well, an audiobook, someone else is deciding on intonation, pacing, all that, even what the characters sound like. And I want to decide that. Or rather, I want the author to either do a good or a bad job telling me that. I don't want someone solving that for me. And when it comes to older books, like I always say on this channel, if I wanted some schmuck reading in my ear, I'd still be married to Deb. Okay? So it's a not for me as well. So we'll move on to B, Bildungsroman. A coming of age. Is it a yes or a no? Is it a hot or a not?
Well, I have to say yes, because if I didn't say yes, I would eliminate about 80% of the books that I read. So yeah, it's very hot.
What about older books that you've liked? Would we consider The Magic Mountain a Bildungsroman?
No, but
certainly consider your beloved Joseph and his brothers, right? That would have to count.
Well, Buddenbrooks would be the
yes.
Bildungsroman.
Every time, I swear, every time he does a video with me, we automatically resort to Thomas Mann.
Well, we're using German words here.
So. We are. It's natural, yes. For me, it's a not. I find them very boring. On the page, I find them very boring because they're always cleaned up. There's almost no verisimilitude when it comes to these things. Almost never. But anyway, C is children's books.
Yeah, I have children, so I read them.
But are there any children's books that you enjoy yourself?
Yeah. There are lots of children's books that I enjoy. I like the classic children's books as much as anyone. We're reading a Moomin's book right now. I like it.
I love them too. When they're done right, when they're not condescending. If they're condescending to the kid, they're going to be unbearable to me. So the saccharine sweet kind, I hate. But the good ones, the great ones, I love.
Yeah.
Then D, digital.
Digital books.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I'm
curious to know how much digital reading you do.
Whether or not I prefer it, I'm enormously grateful to their existence because they just they open up the possibilities of getting books and of reading things. They make it so much easier. They hack so many problems that would exist
for critics.
Otherwise. For critics,
think about all the hours you and I have spent saying, "I know I saw this. I know I saw this detail, and I need it. I need it for the review. I know I saw it. Where is it?"
Or also, I realize now I need to look at this book in order to talk about this other book. But it's 8:00 at night, and so I can't go to a bookstore now. But now it takes literally 10 seconds to buy the book for $9.99. If that's the most, if you, that's the worst that it comes to. Often, usually it's less. But even if you're just a reader, things like that, like, oh, I want this book, you can just get it. Right.
That. But so far, you're mentioning utilitarian things. Do you enjoy reading electronically? Or when it's totally your druthers without any deadline?
I would still prefer to have the book.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay. But you're still giving it a hot.
Yes. Definitely hot.
Me too. I absolutely love digital books. Then E is experimental fiction. Again, kind of the bread and butter of what you do. But I've noticed that over the years you aren't all that forgiving to experimental fiction.
No, as long as you treat it like you treat any other subgenre, where some is good and some is not good, and you take it on its own terms and you adjudge its qualities. But as a thing in itself, I think there's a lot of sort of annoying elitism that comes around. But when it's good, then it's extremely exciting. So yeah, experimental is hot. But no writer ever says, "I'm writing an experimental novel." It's always comes after the fact when people like us, or especially marketers of books, are trying to figure out how possibly to present the book. So they just call it experimental, which can mean 1,000 different things. But yes.
I have a lot less patience. I'm quivering on the borderline of hot and not, because a lot of the so-called experimental stuff that I read or have read seems to be doing its dipsy-doodle stuff because the author is sort of openly or implicitly asserting that the old genres are empty, they're tired, and what am I supposed to do? Right? He said, she said. Maybe it's just that I hate Cormac McCarthy. I can't let it go.
I think sometimes the reaction to an experiment, the idea of an experimental novel, people treat it as though by being experimental, it has transcended the very possibility of being either good or bad, which is just not true. An experimental novel can be successful or not successful. And so there you go.
All right. F, fantasy.
but I don't understand the terms here. I'm not going to say that it's bad, that it's not. Am I just like, to me?
To you. Have you ever read a work of fantasy?
I've read very few. And mostly.
Have you read The Lord of the Rings?
I've read Lord of the Rings. I read it when I was young, when I was growing up. So in that sense, I'm very indebted to fantasies because it's helped. It was one of the things that sparked my love of reading. So,
for you, it was Lloyd Alexander. Right?
It was Lloyd Alexander was the one I liked the most. That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you would never read it now. You would never read it in the future.
I might, but
so are we calling this a hot or a not? I don't really know. You don't object to it.
No, I don't. I have no objection to it. But if these things are like people in a bar who were making eyes at, I don't know. Is that how it works?
That's kind of what it is.
Then it's
smash or pass.
Then I'd have to be pretty in my cups
with mead.
Exactly.
I like it a lot more. It's a hot for me. Then G.
Oh, no.
Graphic novel.
Well, so it would be a not, except this now has a huge overlap with children's books. At least in the world of children that I overlap with, there's a huge interest in kids' graphic novel series. That's what my kids like more than anything else. And
more than storybooks.
More than storybooks.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they will consent to having storybooks read to them. But when they want to choose books from the library and when they talk about book series with their friends, it's graphic novel stuff. So I never read it, and I don't know much about it. So for myself, I would say not. But in fact, I am much more. I know a lot about Babysitter Club graphic novel series.
Well, I of course am a hot. Especially if it's Superman fighting General Zod, who has just escaped from the Phantom Zone. H is horror. But you had your one exposure with The Abominable, and Dan Simmons dropped the ball. I couldn't believe the horror I experienced when I got to the end of that book and realized it's the Nazis.
It's the Nazis.
And that you're reading this thing. I could just picture you over there at home getting to the end of it and thinking, what are these dorks liking this stuff for? I saw this coming 200 pages ago.
Yeah, they're racing the Nazis to the top of Mount Everest, and then they're getting in fistfights on the top of Mount Everest.
I was hoping there would be an actual abominable snowman. I was hoping there'd be a Yeti in it, that you would be exposed to a fantasy element.
For me,
read very little horror.
I've read very little. For me, it's not. Occasionally, I do read one, and I like it, but I'm a little.
I think we're on the same page.
I'm a little wimpy.
Edgar Allan Poe. Right? We both love Poe.
Yeah, but
have you ever read Lovecraft?
I've never read Lovecraft. I'm sorry to say, and I love Poe, but I actually the sort of the horror stories. I think I like that less than other kinds of Poe. I like the doggerel poems of Poe the most. I really like that.
And his book reviews.
Book reviews. God. Exactly, and his essays.
His book reviews are incredible. Even now, they're incredible. All right. I is for inspirational.
I would probably say not.
I would say not, too. The difference between our nots being that you are not exposed to it, and I read and review a piece of crap along this genre every single day. Every single day. I read a book about a Nigerian preacher who talks of Jesus in his bathtub every single day. I think the Lord shows me visions in clouds, and in order to help you believe me, I am including photos of those clouds. Here's one that looks just like the Milan Cathedral. It's a blob. It doesn't look like the Milan Cathedral. It's not that God is showing you visions. It's that you've got severe glaucoma. So I'm a not, but not because I don't read it.
Well, I find you reading those books inspirational. You should write a book about it.
J is for journalism. Surely
Just
the broad
journalism,
umbrella.
Hot or not? I'm going to go with hot.
Yeah,
Journalism is good.
Me too. Very much so. Totally self-interested answer there from both of us. Where would we be without journalistic? We're both hot for journalism. Then K is Kitsch.
Well, but doesn't it have to be not? The word itself is derogatory.
Well, Greg explains that this is something, he's referring to something that has popular or sentimental appeal.
Right. Everyone does have very particular kitsch items that have sentimental appeal to them, but as a whole thing, you would have to say that kitsch is not a good thing.
It would have to be not.
Yeah.
And I say that as a fan of giant killer shark novels. Then L is for library. Do you ever use the library?
Well, not so much anymore, but I used to go to the main branch of the New York Public Library all the time.
The Rose Reading Room. Gorgeous place.
Exactly, the Rose Reading Room, and I used to sometimes I had a study carol, so sometimes a group study carol. You could, if you said that you had sort of a research project, even if you didn't particularly have a research project, you sort of made one up. You could get access to a study carol with a bunch of other people. That was great. And then libraries to smaller ones. If you've got kids, they're really important sort of community centers. And yeah, libraries.
Have you brought your kids to the main New York Library?
I think
with the lions and everything.
Yeah. We've been a few times. There's a beautiful park outside. There's a skating rink now. We've gone skating in Bryant Park.
Wasn't there a time in the midst of prehistory when you and I were at the Rose Reading Room and we were both writing?
I think so. At
one of their wooden tables. I could swear that I remember that I was writing so energetically. I was rattling the table and I was chortling because I was drawing blood. Well, you were just neatly sitting there. I think we did that at least once.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Okay, M is mystery.
Well, again, I'll just say not, because I just don't read them, and they,
But the journal does have a mystery person.
They have their own columnist, and as a genre, I think it's splendid, but I don't read it.
And we both knew a mystery columnist.
We did. We knew a wonderful mystery
columnist. The mighty
Irma. Yep, she knew everything about mysteries, as long as we were talking about Agatha Christie. everything.
She was a treat to deal with. An absolute treat. And for me, this is, of course, hot. I love murder mysteries. Just love them. I am currently... I was going to stop with just one, but I am currently on my third consecutive mystery by Mignon Eberhardt. And I am really liking... She's always tried my patience a little because it seems like she's way too fussy in setting out the silverware. But now I'm getting into that. Now I'm actually recognizing all the stuff she's doing in those preliminary chapters. So I'm having a blast. N is nonfiction.
Yeah, I'm going to say hot for nonfiction.
His actual column has the word fiction in it. So there's not a whole lot that you do. I love nonfiction myself. Absolutely love it. So it's a smash of a hot for me. Then O is for Omnibus.
Huh.
And here I'm curious. A lot of these questions are genuine for me. I just have never bothered to ask you them. If you were at the Strand,
yeah,
and you were just idly looking down the shelves, and you saw a big fat omnibus of something you like,
yeah,
you'd never seen the omnibus before. Omnibuses are a little bit awkward to use, but would you grab it?
Here's what I like. I like when an omnibus, but it's not really an omnibus. I like when a great amount of a writer's work is compressed into like a portable thing, like the Viking portable library thing, because that way you can get the Viking portable Milton and sort of feel like, okay, I have basically all the Milton I need in case I need to refer to it or I want to read.
Right, and an omnibus would be all of the Milton. Not just all the Milton you need.
It's just all everything. So, yeah.
Do you prefer the one to the other?
I prefer the one that's more condensed. So no, I wouldn't do an omnibus because that would be a completist sort of thing, and that would take up a lot of space, and that would be big. So no, I wouldn't do an omnibus.
I say a hot, even though I'm a big fan of the Viking Portable Library series, and I have quite a few of them. I go back to them. The thing I can't stand about that sort of thing is that somebody else did the picking for me.
Yeah.
That drives me nuts. That just drives me nuts. Give me a big cinder block thing that's everything, so that if I need something and you thought, Joe Simon, in 1950 thought nobody's ever going to want this.
I personally am okay with deferring authority to other people once in a while about other things that I may not know everything about.
No. Yeah. Absolutely not. Now. Plus, I get burned on that because... what if there's a particular letter from John Quincy Adams that you didn't think, that Louis Untermeyer didn't think was important in 1930, that I maybe do? Or, infamously, selected volumes of Thomas Paine never have his anti-religion stuff. They never do. What if I want to read that? Now, I don't defer to anybody. Anyway, P is poetry.
Yeah, poetry is hot.
Poetry is hot. Q is quests. Books where a protagonist goes on a quest.
Yes. Well,
when was the last time you read something like that?
Well, I think I'm always reading something like that. Isn't there you have a John Gardner book right there, and he famously said, there are two kinds of books. One is somebody goes on a journey, and the other is a stranger comes to town. And somebody goes on a journey is just a more homely way of referring to some sort of quest novel. So yes.
But what like that happens in the contemporary fiction that you read? This miserable wetwash by 20-something authors who are constantly on a Thorazine shuffle. The quest they're on is, can I stop writing now? And it shows in the book. where your protagonist, who has your first name, your last name, your school, your Facebook account, eventually gets too tired for the thing to go on. And then it ends in mid-sentence, in mid-chapter.
No, all books, they're always about wandering. They're always about someone who feels unmoored or homeless in some metaphysical way. And so they're looking for some sort of place, some sort of belief. That's what all books are. Those are essentially quest novels. So I'm going to say they're hot. Or I'm hot for them, or whatever this is.
R is romance.
I guess this is just referring to the genre of romance novels, and so I'll say not.
I love romance novels. Absolutely love them. S is for science fiction. And I still chuckle. You reviewed one of those Library of America 2-volume things.
I know, I was asked to do it.
Watching you work your way through it, it was exactly like I imagined Margaret Mead was encountering some hitherto unencountered, forest people and trying to piece together their language. Where you're reading through each one saying, but none of this is real. What are you talking about? There are no cities on Pluto.
It had that really good book that's set during the Middle Ages, during the Crusades, where the Crusaders are abducted by aliens, but they don't really know what's going on, and so they just continue the Crusades in outer space, in sort of intergalactically, but they're still just continuing the Crusades. I like that.
Is there any science fiction that would ever come within your professional ambit?
No, it has to be that sort of crossover thing. So again, they have their own columnist who does. There is a dedicated science fiction columnist.
But the book The Ascent, that was longlisted and shortlisted, I think, for the Booker, that's science fiction, and that's a big, thick thing. That could easily come to you.
The Martin McGuinness book, In Ascension.
In Ascension, that's right. Might you poach that from a science fiction person? That's close enough, right?
Possibly.
Surely if it gets longlisted for a literary award.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Okay. T is translation. Works in translation.
Yeah, very important.
Which you have a long history of loving them, right? Same as I do.
Yeah. Well, it just adds so much breadth to the reading possibilities. So yeah.
All right. Both of us hot. Then U is Übermensch. The concept of the Übermensch.
It's just. Do we like Nietzsche? Is this what it's asking? Or?
Well, do you ever encounter that in the fiction that you read? A character. What do we have? We have.
Is this getting back to Cormac McCarthy, or is this
the Superman or extraordinary human characters who can do everything?
I guess I'll say not. I don't know. I don't have a. I'm going to go with not, since my grounding in books is just of the more sort of realist nature and not so much of like these sort of philosophical fables, if that's what it's about. I don't know.
I'm going to say hot because it's Superman. It's one of my favorite characters. Let's see here. V is for Victorian literature. 1837, 1901.
Very hot.
Yes.
Couldn't be hotter.
Both big fans of Victorian.
Scorching hot. My God.
W is for Western.
I'm just going to be honest and continue with what's going on in terms of things that I read very rarely. Although is that not true?
You get Westerns.
I read a few Westerns every year.
The Sisters Brothers, right? Or
yeah, well, that was a funny book. No, actually, I'll say hot. I like Western. No, you know what? Because Westerns defined broadly just basically means books set in the West in some capacity. It doesn't have to mean
cowboys.
It
doesn't have to be the Old West.
Yeah, so I'll say hot. No, I do read Westerns every year, and yeah. Westerns are good.
Absolutely hot. Then X is X-rated.
In a book?
I think the closest you would ever come would be Dennis Cooper. Right?
Right.
No, books don't... Oh, baby, what are you doing? That's where the sounds are coming from. His mouth. You don't have to stare at it, baby. Yes.
Speaking of X-rated.
Yes. Oh, baby, what are you doing?
I'll say not for X-rated. I don't really know what it means. So.
I would say not as well. I know what it means, but it's incredibly boring.
Yeah, it sounds very boring.
Then Y is young adult?
I'll say not at the moment, just because I wouldn't choose to read them, and I have no reason to yet, but I will one day soon when my kids get older, but for now I'll say not.
I am hot for YA unless it is horrible. Unless it is, especially the modern 21st century version of YA, which has no interest in story.
I have to say, as a genre, of all these genres, which I've said sort of not to, but always a provisional, but who knows, maybe I'll get into it. YA seems like the scariest one, like the one I would be least inclined to.
Nowadays.
Yeah.
YA fandom is known for its
exactly.
toxicity. It's the most toxic place anywhere in the literary world.
Right. You'd just be like, why would I want to even venture into this?
Yeah.
Where you would be just terrified to have an opinion about anything. Yeah.
And then Z, Zeitgeist. I think Greg had German on the brain when he was doing,
really.
Doing this
thing.
Übermensch
Bildungsroman.
Zeitgeist, a book that taps into the spirit of the time.
I'm actually going to say not, because I feel that I am just notoriously... I think this is a real weakness which maybe has kind of an obverse sort of strength to it, that I am completely clueless about what is going on in the zeitgeist, and I'm unable to judge a book based on its zeitgeistiness. I have no idea.
Yes.
So
you're the only person I know who's legitimately unconnected to the zeitgeist. Yeah. I don't know why that is, but it's always been true. But do you think a zeitgeist book, I mean, would that be the same thing as, for instance, an experimental book, where if the author's trying to do it, it's probably bad?
If the author is trying to do it, it probably means they are a derivative. I think it usually happens sort of by accident.
Right. Like, for instance, think of books that did manage to tap into the zeitgeist. Like,
well, I guess like Sally Rooney is the famous one, and then every year.
But you've also got Garp.
Right, like Garp.
Baby, where are you going?
Right, and then you get 100 books compared to those books that come out,
right.
every.
But it does have to be accidental.
Right? I think so.
If you try to do it, you're going to fail.
I think so. The writer has to be slightly bewildered by what's going on after it happens.
All right. Well, I am a not for the zeitgeist.
What?
I am. Yeah. Yeah, because every time an author tries to do it, and usually that's when I notice it, is when they try to do it.
Yes.
Usually you don't notice that a book has tapped into the zeitgeist until the zeitgeist has changed, until it's 30 years later.
Exactly.
Then you can look back and say, okay. I didn't at the time, all I had was negative things to say about Bright Lights, Big City, but now I see that it was tapping into something.
Also, it does have to be 30 years later, and also it's just one of those. It's just one of those completely made-up things where some people just start saying that's the zeitgeist, but I don't know. It seems totally arbitrary to me. Very against it.
I was hoping that we could do the A to Z hot or not tag without Sally Rooney getting mentioned at all.
Sorry.
but hopefully that will be the last mention tonight. Oh no, actually it won't be, will it? Because the minute I have even a tiny bit of fuel in the tank, I'll probably shift to that subject. Oh, we have so much to talk about. It's going to be so much fun for one of us. Anyway, that is the A to Z hot or not tag.
Say goodbye.
Here's the baby. She was all excited when a guest arrived, and now she's just over it. Just over it. But we're gonna wrap this up. And Sam is only here for these videos, so he will say goodbye because he'll be just back to me tomorrow. But anyway, we'll wrap this up a little bit late for Tag Tuesday, but better late than never. And I'll see you all soon. Bye, BookTube.